isn't it?
Going live. Wait for it.
What is up, everybody? There's always
What?
this moment here where I'm not sure if we're live, but I'm definitely sure we are now. Welcome to the show. We have a great one in store for you today off the back of a earlier discussion, which was off the back of another series we did on using weightlifting belts and should you use a weightlifting belt. Now, before we get started, in case we haven't met, my name's Yanni Burmeister. Below me is Richard Lellies. I'm not usually this color. It's just the lighting today. It's a bit strange. We are Unity Gym and the Unified Movement System, where we teach driven people like yourself how to be strong, flexible, and fit. And today we are joined by Dr. Phil, aka Phil White from ADPT Physio. He hates me calling him Dr. Phil, but it just sounds good. Uh, Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we're talking about how to train your core muscles, and this is going to be a good discussion. And before we get started, I would really, really love it if you're watching on YouTube to smash that like button. I've just done it myself. And introduce yourself. Say hi if you're watching the live stream. We've got a lot of people over on the Movement Mastermind Facebook group. That is a free group that you can all join. We provide lots of cool stuff in there. Most importantly, you get access to our 20-minute flexibility routine for free. You get access to our UMS warm-ups for the upper and lower body to prepare you for physical training. And you can join our 5-day flexibility challenge, which is kicking off on Monday. You'll be working with Rad in a Zoom environment, back and forth, delivering breakthroughs in your physical capability and training. It's well worth the journey. How are we today, guys?
Right.
Good.
Despite the weather
Yeah, you
again.
good to see this group. Usually I'm in on a Wednesday for the live streams, which is only going to the programming and coaching group. So missed out catching up with you guys on the movement mastermind. So trying to pick days where I can, where I'm free at 9 a.m. and to jump in and see how you guys are getting on.
Awesome.
Might
Now,
have your
Enjoying these
know,
discussions.
for those who don't know Phil and ADPT Physio, go and check them out. adpt.physio. He is an absolute beast. He has a lot of experience working with elite level athletes and also just us. I frequent his table often, and he is amazing. But he does online physiotherapy for people all around the world as well. Morning, Vinny Brown. Morning, Christy Lovejoy. Everyone joining us live. Okay, let's dive straight in. So, I wanted to have today's discussion, and I was thrilled when Phil was able to join us because we had an earlier series last week, and I think we wrapped it up yesterday on the use of weightlifting belts. And we are, all three of us, Richard, myself, and Phil, are proponents of the use of a weightlifting belt when you're lifting heavy weights, as are a lot of our colleagues in the industry. And, whenever we talk about them, we always get a little bit of a pushback from people who are dogmatic about the use of weightlifting belts for whatever reason. I certainly used to be. I used to think it was something that would de-train you, because you're relying on the weightlifting belt as though you're relying on a cast that sort of switches off the muscles. But there's a lot of more recent sort of research and just opinion that the weightlifting belt actually helps you through a little bit of additional proprioception to push against and upregulate the abdominal bracing and core muscles. I certainly agree with it. I've been using a weightlifting belt now for about maybe 5 years for the big heavy weightlifting, and it certainly is helping me. And I wrote a blog about this yesterday. I think that there's a couple of good reasons for it, but it kicked off a discussion about core training and core muscles and systems and dysfunctions that I think is, providing us an opportunity to give some value. So that's where we're going to go today, and that is this notion that there's been a debate going on in the fitness space for a long time, and I certainly was indoctrinated into it from my early days of training with in the Paul Chek sort of faculty, where it's very important to isolate the core early on in one's training age to sort of reactivate, they call it, core musculature, because everyone is diagnosed with a core dysfunction. And especially if you've been sedentary, your core switches off and you need to retrain the core muscles as though they're a system of muscle working exogenously to the rest of your body, externally to the rest of your body. And it's just the more I've learnt and the further I've gone in my own physical development and my education, the more I've learnt that that is just not the truth. It's almost impossible to function without the core muscles sort of firing up to stabilize and activate. And I'd love to hear Phil's opinion on this from a physiotherapist's standpoint. Now, Phil's also done an exercise sports science degree. He's a very, very I would consider him an authority on the matter. And why don't we get your 2 cents on this one, Phil?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm just going to start off as well with like Yanni saying that I'm a big proponent of belts. I definitely think they're a really useful tool, and knowing when to use them and when not to use them is just something that I think we've got to get a bit of nuance in the conversation, because I think sometimes just saying it's like always right to use it versus always right to not use it is where we can kind of fall into these traps. Whereas I think just like different techniques in lifting, they're all useful at different times in your training journey. But certainly didn't, it wasn't something that really came up lots in your conventional sports science degree or physiotherapy degree discussion. Unfortunately, it does seem to you just don't get to that sort of level of depth. But after training for quite a long time with the guys in the gym and with the guy with Sebastian, our Australian strength coach, it was really interesting seeing the belt used in practice, and then that inspired me to kind of do a bit more of my own sort of research into it. But I think it's I guess looking at the belt specifically, I think it's a great tool to be able to for different people to help them learn about bracing, because when I'm teaching techniques, it's become really apparent over the years that different people respond differently to technique cueing. Some people are really good at visually, taking on words and are able to understand how, what you're saying and then do it within their own body. They have good sort of internal awareness. Other people sort of need visual feedback, so doing exercise in front of the mirror and seeing what's going on. Other people need sort of other people are good at knowing where their body's in space, so having proprioceptive awareness, and other people are totally useless at that. And then some people need that sort of tactile feedback. And I think having the belt is really good for those people who do need the tactile feedback about bracing as you are contracting strongly against something. You can really get the sense of whether or not you're tight or not. Because when it does come to lifting heavy weights, bracing is key, and having a strong base to work from is just the key to lifting safely. So it's an awesome tool, and having seen especially Sebastian Orov and his top level lifters use it to great effect, there's a reason why the top people in the world use it. Now, whether to say that's not to say that using it at all times at every lift is necessarily the right idea either. I think it's a great idea to use it when you really need it on the big compound lifts, and maybe you do some phases where you use it, some phases where you don't. But certainly when you are working towards your top level stuff, it's a fantastic tool. Now, when it comes, do we want to kind of pause there and discuss that, or do we want to go straight into
I mean, look, I'll quickly just say, and I said this in my article yesterday, I'm just finishing a 4-week phase of body composition training, which means that unlike sort of muscular hypertrophy, where you would be training muscle groups in a workout to get a lot of volume, or the regular sort of UMS strength training, where we focus on a movement pattern and complementary exercises for that movement pattern. I'm doing whole body workouts, and I do 4 a week: Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm squatting every day on Monday and Thursday, barbell back squat, high bar position, high racked. And then on Tuesday and Friday, it's a front racked barbell squat. So there's slight variations in the movement patterns, but I'm still doing a version of the squat all 4 days. Wednesday, I just do a cardio session and some flexibility training. And on Saturday, I do another cardio session, flexibility training. And so I've just done this whole block without the use of a belt or squatting shoes or anything like that. But I'm lifting submaximal weights. I'm doing 8 to 10 reps, which is very, very, I think I will finish this week on 110 kilos for the back squat and 100 kilos for the front squat for 8 to 10. So that's very, very light in comparison to what I would lift doing anything 5 and below, and yeah, so there are periods of time when you choose not to use your belt and things like that, and that's great. But I can assure you, when I'm doing max lifting or max loading, I will generally always be using my weightlifting belt. And the reason I gave 3 reasons yesterday in the written piece that I published. One of them is that there is, whether you like it or not, exercise to a high intensity regularly is not always healthy. Like the amount that I like to train and to the intensity that I like to train to stimulate massive amounts of strength stimulus, strength adaptation, puts a lot of stress on the body. And if there's any way, I'm constantly looking at ways to mitigate the amount of stress and the risks associated with that, because I don't want to be one of those people. I'm 42 years old. I don't want to be one of those people that are 52 talking about what they used to be able to do in their 20s. I want to be 52 and still lifting, and then second to that is, that you've got to pay attention. If someone's more successful than you, then whether you like it or not, they're better than you at something. They know something you don't know, or they do something more effectively than you do. And there are plenty of people that are better than me, more successful than me in weightlifting and strength development, and I like to pay attention to what those people are doing. Sebastian's one of them, and when I see all these guys using weightlifting belts, of course you can find outliers, anomalies. We had one guy in the comments point someone out who's an absolute weapon, and he doesn't seem to, at least, wear a belt in a lot of the videos that he posts. And yeah, that's totally fine. You can always find the outlier, but n doesn't equal 1. N equals 1 doesn't work in when you're looking at the broader masses. You've got to look at what the majority of people are doing to get their success. That's why we have, that's the benefit of science, and so yeah, that's my opinion on it. Richie, why don't you give your 2 cents?
Yeah, I man, like hearing Phil say that just further enhances my opinion on it. Like people are so varied, and there's so many different goals when it comes to training. So whether you use a belt, whether you don't use a belt, there's a bunch of reasonings behind it. But ultimately, I think what you were saying, Yanni, like overcomplicating things to address an issue isn't the way to go about it. Like we have to look at the body as a bunch of systems, and sometimes treating them as a simpler system and not overcomplicating it is the way to go. And yeah, I know where I stand on core activation and how I'm going to be training, but I think there's a lot of ways to approach it though. I think so.
Yeah.
If your goals are to do with getting strong, and lifting, and squatting, deadlifting, and ultimately like a strength based, then yeah, I think the belt and embracing your core in the manner that we were saying is really going to pay off for you. But if it's something else in terms of like your goals, sports related, then I think the belt becomes more questionable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so my internet cut out there for a second, but did you get into, Yanni, the discussion about like the overcomplicating and going overly isolated?
This is where I want to go now. Okay, so because we how to strengthen your core is the title of the video, and this is kind of what I wanted to finish on is the risks associated with overcomplicating training, and yeah, I'd love to get your opinion on this this notion that the core needs to be retrained by isolating it. And even if that's possible, and don't get me wrong, I spent about 4 years of my personal training life doing this. I went down this rabbit hole with Paul Check, of needing to train the transverse abdominis, the multifidus, the pelvic floor, all in isolation, by getting people to lay down and learn how to activate these muscles and feel them and this and that. And, I'll be honest, it didn't help me. It didn't fix me. I came from a compromised spine, and that's how I was easily indoctrinated into this. I had a horrific horse riding accident when I was younger, and I battled really bad back pain and back spasm most of my life. And the funniest thing is, I did 4 years with Paul Chek and all this. I didn't train under him, but I did get trained by him doing his certifications. And that's how I trained myself, and that's how I trained my clients. And it wasn't until I met and became friends with Sebastian, and then started going into the PICP Poliquin Institute Poliquin Strength certification. And then we learned the concept of snatch grip deficit deadlifting to bulletproof your back and that sort of thing. And I shunned it because I was so dogmatic about that style of training. And I just wouldn't even try it. And then I watched Bass, who we both did the certifications at the same time, watched him produce amazing results with a lot of his clients. And then it was a talk that we had. I was just so frustrated that I couldn't pick up a barbell off the floor without experiencing a severe back spasm. And I'd been doing, and he basically said, like, what have you got to lose? You've been doing this Czech stuff for 4 years. And he'd done that stuff too. He goes, you've been doing it for 4 years and it's not producing the result you want. Why don't you just try this? I can't explain it, man, but I've had people with the most compromised backs do this snatch grip deficit protocol that Charles Poliquin suggested we use, and it fixes them. And I can't explain why, but it fixes them. It works. And so I just went, bugger it. What have I got to lose? And I did it. And guess what? I've never had a problem since. So there is something to, and I've since replicated that with many of our clients,
Yeah. So it's something that, like, coming into the physiotherapy space, I guess there's a big emphasis from like kind of classical physio education on this real like isolating of those muscles that you talked about, which are components of the core. So that's kind of the starting point, and kind of like mostly what they teach you for dealing with people with back pain. And I think it can be a really useful tool for people who are at a level where you're basically like unable to do anything, because it's the on-ramp to then starting to contract and load your muscles. But where I think a lot of this goes wrong is when people think that's like not just the on-ramp, but that's the entirety of kind of what they can and should be doing. So I think people fall into the trap, both practitioners fall into the trap of being like, okay, I've got some results here, so I should just do more of this same thing. And one of the hard things I think as a physio is having the confidence to tell people to do something kind of simple and to do it often and consistently, because that doesn't make you sound mind-blowingly smart. Whereas if I came in and said that, you have to contract your transverse abdominis and do this thing that only I can teach you how to do, and using fancy Latin words and getting you to like contract against a cuff, and really making it sound like it's a very complicated issue, which I've got the silver bullet for, then as a health practitioner, that makes me feel like I've got some big value that I'm able to pass on to the patient, and that's worth their money and their time and all of those things. But I've sort of come to realize that while that might be helpful for some people as an on-ramp into loading, if you're just doing that, then you're never preparing their body for life, really. And having been on the patient side of things, you end up kind of a bit bewildered and a bit sort of like, oh geez, I've got this big problem. I can't even figure out if I'm contracting the right thing. Have I been doing this wrong in my life? Have I caused like irreparable damage in my body by not like drawing my navel to my spine whenever I do anything? And for a while, trying to walk and run, I was like overly contracting, just trying to like get these mysterious muscles to contract. But again, this stuff, like if for people, when you've seen people who are in like acute back pain where they can't even move without screaming, like it makes a lot of sense to me to start them here as a way of getting them to contract and load. But where so many physios fall into the trap, and then patients or people who like training get drawn into the trap of thinking like, oh, this is all I can do, and so I've just got to do more intense, complicated variations of this instead of using that on-ramp to then get back towards normal movement. Because again, your body adapts to what you spend your time doing. The kind of stimulus you give your body needs to align over time with the activities you want to be able to do functionally and pain-free. So if you're just lying there doing pelvic floor activations and core strength activations, then that's not conditioning your body to be able to, like, if you want to be able to run, jump, move, all of those things. So I think, seeing it as like, again, a useful tool, but something that definitely can cause more problems than it solves when people then think, if I can't do this right, then my body will never function properly. Because again, pain being your perceived threat, if you're constantly really thinking hard about this one particular thing, you're like, oh, I can't do it right, it probably caused all these issues, it's really complicated, all these things, like that ends up turning up the signal of the stimulus you get from that area, and it takes up more space in your brain, and then that can end up causing its own issues, because now every time you move, every time you do anything, bend over, pick something up, you're going to be thinking like, oh, what if my TA is not contracting properly? I'm going to injure myself. So where you then look at just to finish off, you then contrast that to your approach of snatch, grip, deficit deadlifting. Like if you've gone from thinking like, oh, I can't bend over properly without, like, if I'm not contracting these muscles, to like, hey, I'm going to be doing a bloody complicated, a like intense looking barbell deadlift that looks like you're an Olympic lifter or something like that. If you've then taught your brain like, look at this, like be able to do that, and you're able to complete it and do it pain-free over time, and you teach your brain over a training program of weeks of doing this stuff, then now you've just lowered your threat so much because you've proved to your body that you can do it, proved to your brain.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. And I think we should, tomorrow we'll have a part 2 of this discussion, because we're going to have Phil on again, aren't we, tomorrow? And
yeah, but the other group. So
no, it's all right. We're going to do, we'll go live in here as well. And we'll talk very specifically about what we believe is the best way to strengthen your core, continuing on with this. So how do you take it from the point of when you're in acute pain, learning how to, activate these muscles like Phil's just spoken about, to, okay, now prepare yourself for real life. Because I think that's really important.
Just to make it clear, like even people in acute pain, like not everyone, I think, needs to do pelvic floor activations or TA stuff. That's particularly for, if you had injuries or trauma or childbirth or something related to like those particular muscles. I'm not saying it's appropriate for everyone as well. So yeah, I think a good discussion to have for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to continue this in for part 2 tomorrow, guys. Thanks for joining us. We got to jump into our coaching group and give them their daily group coaching call. We will see you tomorrow. Thanks very much, Phil. Thanks,
and just
Richard.
quickly, Vinny said good core strength is absolutely essential for spinning techniques in Taekwondo, and that's exactly right. Like the core is kind of the key for then other big sports related movements, and so we'll talk about how you then incorporate that into training tomorrow. So good one, Vinny. Yep. We'll see you tomorrow.
Good stuff, guys. See you tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.